Then I have keywords for the type of hatred people will encounter when they read this, and key topics in Greek history. These sort of are intended to function partly as a content warning if anyone wants to then pursue the material, or also if their assignment was to just decide to read a few from this collection, this will help them kind of choose based on their own interests. Then we include a couple quotes from the article, which are designed to capture both its engagement with antiquity and to make obvious its hatefulness. So the second one here invokes sort of the theme of white extinction, which is a common theme on white ethno-nationalist sites, but also refer to, make it clear that these really do engage with antiquity. And then finally, we have a link to the, not to the article itself, but to a PDF version, which we have made, which is taken from the webpage where it appeared, but has had all the links stripped out of it, had all the kind of paratextual material that occurs on the site. On the site itself, there's all these advertisements for the editor-in-chief's racist books and for their racist pamphlet on crime data, and there's comments and things. So we've sort of give a stripped down version here without any links, either to the original article or to other articles that they might have linked to, or the paratextual material, which sort of allows engagement with the source material without visiting the site, with a minimum, I would say, of potentially traumatizing imagery, products, et cetera, that are in a sense kind of extraneous to the article itself. Now, so nowhere is there a link to the original site, but of course students will be able to find the originals if they want to. They're just a Google search away. They have enough information to do so, but they'll have to kind of take that on themselves. And this was the solution that my group of people working on this sort of developed as a way to balance the possibility of engagement with the full material and avoiding to promoting the sites. I'll come back to my slides for the other aspect of what I presented. Let's see. There. The other aspect of what I have released on my site is the how to use document, which here I give some abbreviated general principles from it. The main goals of the how to use were to advise instructors who might use this on principles for how to approach this material in the classroom and be sort of conscious of how it might affect their students. And then to provide discussion questions that are intended to go beyond, which is beyond where most people automatically go, which is the act of refutation and the kind of distancing of ourselves from these materials, and move towards more self-reflection about what might be familiar about them. Now, already I'm starting to think towards revision of these based on some of the things I've heard today, and I'm sure there'll be more to learn later on today. But the main approach I took was toward content, having faculty be aware of the need to have content warnings and make alternative assignments available to avoid sort of false neutrality or treating the material on these sites as good faith contributions. So I ask teachers to use their authority to condemn these approaches in the class, especially in a place where some students might encounter some of these ideas for the first time. Try to sort of situate the arguments about antiquity in the context of the overall project of sort of denying the effects of structural racism on non-white people in the United States. All the sites are organized around minimizing that, and so using this opportunity to call attention to that act of minimization, which relates, I think, to point 3 here, to sort of be aware of how some of this material will appear to be sort of neutral historical writing. Then you need to kind of tease out what the political implications of it are, asking people who use this to avoid euphemisms like alt-right and describe these arguments for what they are. A sort of element of information literacy, of recognizing the biases of the content available on the web, and of course allowing students to opt out. It's not going to be beneficial for, to trust students when they are going to recognize this as something that could be traumatic for them and not beneficial to their learning. As a second set, I recommended that people, I mean, these are things that I don't think anyone here would probably need to be instructed to do, but that we shouldn't be calling on our students of color to explain what it feels like to encounter this. We shouldn't be worrying that we will appear to be partisan in bringing up this material, which this has become a more complicated issue as our own elected government has promoted many of these ideas more openly. So perhaps this needs a little more thinking about what I'm trying to say there. And then above all, don't present anything on these sites as legitimate arguments. They're here to be condemned. What they want is for us to take them seriously. So, that is a kind of a big risk here, is that they desire legitimacy. And so in a sense, bringing them into the classroom gives them that legitimacy. And we need to always be working to deny them that legitimacy, to bring them in for this critical reaction and self-reflection. I only have a minute left, but I'm wrapping up anyway on the discussion questions here. I've divided them into two screens here just to try to make the slides legible, but I will add here in the chat a link I made to just the discussion questions if you don't want to look for them on the how to use. I start basically asking people to think about why these sites are using antiquity. How do they imply it supports their positions? Why do they believe it lends credibility to their positions? And then I do, because everyone is going to be thinking about how they distort it in certain ways, ask faculty to include that as a discussion. But I also think it's important to balance that with recognizing the ways they represent antiquity accurately. And in a sense, we've tried to choose examples that are not grotesquely distorted or blatantly distorted, but ones that actually are drawing on invoking the various exclusions and violent structures of the ancient world as models for things that they think should be done now. And then the second set of questions are ones that move into what I hope is a more self-reflective mode, so that you think about what they're assuming about the value of the Greco-Roman past and sort of who they assume the audience or who is the ancient world relevant to, and then really move into thinking about what do you recognize that's familiar in these attitudes and ways of valuing. Are they things you recognize from the way your major talks about itself, from the way your institution talks about itself, or the way the major classics or whatever course you're in is situated in your institution? Think about the institutional context and think about where you got these assumptions, if they are things you share, and then turning at the end toward at least a gesture towards an action-oriented approach. Do you think it's important for scholars to know about them and why, and to think about how you can actively resist the version of classical antiquity that these present, so that the conversation, is not just self-reflective, but sort of turns. And like I say, this is an area where I think I'm in the right direction based on what Nicolette and Jonah were talking about, that there is an element of action there, and whether there's sort of enough support in what I've given for people to really make that move is another question. But this is what I mean when I see I think there is a valuable potential for this. So these things are all on the site now. Since it's a WordPress site, they can easily be revised, they can be taken down, they can continue to develop. So I hope to hear from you in the question and answer about how they can be improved to promote worthy goals while minimizing the danger of harm. And if there are themes you would like to see covered that would be useful in your teaching, I'd gratefully take suggestions for those. Right now, the other ones I'm thinking about are Caesar and Virgil for AP teachers, and classical myth, which are two major audiences for us, I think, in the world. This can be done in the Q&A or via email or on social media in the future. And I thank you very much for your time and your attention, and for the conversation that's coming up. Thank you.